Published in 2015 by American author Pierce Brown, Golden Sun is the sequel to the novel Red Rising, making it the second book in the Red Rising saga. I believe there are currently 5 or 6 books in that series. The novel continues the story of Darrow as he seeks to infiltrate and destroy from within the society that oppressed his family and killed his wife. The novel has a rating of 4.46 stars out of 5 on GoodReads, which places it slightly above the first book. According to the reviewers there, it placed number 6 on the New York Times bestseller list and won the 2015 GoodReads Choice Award for Science Fiction. The GoodReads rating was accumulated from over 259,000 ratings. This will be a quick review with minor spoilers. I also have a review of Red Rising on my channel as well if you'd like to go back and visit that first episode. If you were like me when you read the first book and you wanted to have more insight into the Gold Society, then this is the book for you. This story in particular jumps ahead several years, and we find Darrow commanding a ship under the patronage of the governor of Mars, Nero Augustus. Things go awry and Darrow finds himself on the outs with his gold patron, as well as the target of the House Bologna. Darrow's purpose in this story is to instigate a civil war within Gold Society between the royal houses, as well as the sovereign of the society, who is an older woman named Octavia al-Lune. Darrow and company sow discord and political intrigue among the Golds, inspire the lower colors and slaves, and force open warfare on the surface of the Moon and Mars. This book is noticeably different from the first novel. I can tell that Brown is still the author because his prose that I mentioned in my first episode is very similar, such as the sentence fragments and the approachable vocabulary, and he gives Darrow a very distinct inner voice, and that's the same as it was in the first book. But I believe with the majority of reviewers who say that there are some big differences here between this and the first book. One of the big differences is that there is significantly more action in this story, especially in the first and the third acts. So it makes this book feel a lot faster than it actually is, and honestly, that's what kept me reading it. Another difference here between this and the first book is that it attempts to include more mature elements, such as more complex relationships between Darrow and his friends and his lovers, and these new directions don't always work or feel as dramatic as the prose would have you to believe, but in my opinion, I think they are actually quality improvements over the first book, which I enjoyed for the record. Whereas the first book felt more like the man's Hunger Games, Golden Sun feels very much in the same spirit as the second Hunger Games book, which was called Catching Fire. This feels like a man's Catching Fire. So much like the second Hunger Games novel, this sequel also steps up on the action, as well as the amount of time that we spend in Gold Society. So we take this huge step forward into the lore of this universe, and here we learn more about their history, their weapons, the roles of the other colors, especially the blues. They have a more prominent feature here in this story. We learn more about gold architecture, their culture, their forms of entertainment, their hierarchy. And as I've said before, I wonder if the trope of classifying cultures by colors in science fiction and fantasy is now becoming a cliche, but I think it still works here. The characters still felt too similar to one another for me to really care too much for any of them, and I think that will continue to improve as the books progress, but at this stage, I wouldn't read the book for complex character work. Instead, if you're going to read this book and you're looking for some good old-fashioned class warfare in space, this is the book for you. Brown also paints Darrow and his friends as more emotional in this story, which to me is an improvement. There's also a shift to make it more political, with constant shifting alliances, betrayal, house drama. I found the narrative moved too quickly for these twists to have much breathing room, and I hope that he is playing the long game with this series. Because if you want to develop some deep political intrigue, that's something that has to take, if not multiple chapters, multiple books. And it seems like even though he's attempting to include that here, that sort of genre and that sort of narrative device takes breathing room. And I think that maybe Brown overcorrects on this book. He's so focused on the action and so focused on getting things moving at a much quicker pace that perhaps he doesn't give these political intrigue plots sufficient time to really sink in. One trope that is present here is that anyone can die. I feel like maybe there's a little touch of Game of Thrones here, and this is good. I wish more novels followed the principle that anyone can die. You know, we have several deaths in this book that keep the life of the characters interesting. There's also a trope called ballroom blitz here, which is when a dramatic scene unfolds at a social event. Of course, if you're well read in fantasy and science fiction, you will know the most famous of these is of course the Red Wedding from Game of Thrones, but this one in this story is pretty good fun. There's also some good macabre foreshadowing, and I believe a nice payoff to the story. Overall, I really enjoyed the book and I finished it quickly. I agree that this story improves upon the first, and yet I wouldn't say that it's actually substantially better. If you want an action book with good, not amazing character work and plot twist, then this book is a good one. For these reasons, I give Golden Sun the same rating as I gave Red Rising, 3 stars out of 5. If you made it this far into my episode, I appreciate you hanging on until the end. I've got 2 fantasy books coming up in the near future that I'm excited to get into. If you have a request, let me know in the comments of my YouTube channel, and I promise I'll add it to my lineup. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode. I'll see you in the next one, and as always, happy reading.